Exclusive contract with Feilu Novel Network Novel. De Ming. Understanding the Heavenly Adventure. Starting with the inference of longevity method during the Yongle period, Zhu Yunxi traveled through the Ming Dynasty and gained divine-level understanding, making a decision on the spot that went against his ancestors. What's the competition for the throne? Isn't it fragrant to cultivate immortals? So, Zhu Yunxi decisively feigned death to escape the world and continued to develop in the Imperial tomb, but accidentally revived the Ming Taizu who should have died. 3 years later, on the day of Zhu Zhanji's wedding, he was struck by lightning at the Imperial tomb, which everyone regarded as ominous. Zhu Di ordered the royal guards to investigate the truth, but accidentally brought out Zhu Yunxi, who had just completed the transformation of the divine calamity. Old Zhu, good grandson, the fourth usurper of the throne, is almost beaten to death. You should take this throne. Zhu Di said, I thought I was destined by fate, but this kid's special grandmother is fate. Zhu Zhanji said, why is the cricket raised by Uncle Wu having such a large grinding wheel? Is this reasonable? Hu Shanxiang, Sun Yue. Looking at His Royal Highness the Prince of Ouning's hanging curtains. 100 years later, as Zhu Yunxi was about to shatter the void, he looked at the world map filled with the Great Ming Dragon Flag and spread his hands. I really don't want to conquer the world, but my strength doesn't allow it. Slow heating the Ming Invincible article, I hope everyone can be patient. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. The Great Marriage of Tai Sun and Thunder Cutting Through Ancestral Tombs. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In the 9th year of the Yongle reign, the great-grandson Zhu Zhanji was conferred the title of Emperor Taisun and granted the title of Book Treasure. In the same year, Zhu Zhanji welcomed Sun Ruowei and appointed grandson consort, while Hu Shanxiang appointed grandson consort. On this day, red silk is everywhere, and all officials pay their respects and celebrate together. Zhu Zhanji wore a golden crown on his head, dressed in red brocade, with his eyes facing the heavenly gate and starry eyes carrying expectations, waiting quietly for his beauty. Not only him, but also Zhu Di sitting on the throne of the 9 dragons and the courtiers offering congratulations in the entire Jinluan palace were all in a state of ecstasy and confusion. It is said that Hu Shanxiang has a more beautiful appearance than Shishir, as if the clouds are soft and continuous, competing with the bright moon. Even if they compete with 100 flowers, they will still pale in front of her. Not to mention Sun Ruowei, the world is unique, with no one in 1,000 miles, a natural beauty. Such two people, if separated, it is difficult to distinguish the colors of autumn, if combined, they will crown the world. And today, when Emperor Taisun got married, he even took the two beauties into his room, which is enviable. Fortunately, although I can't marry such a woman, today can be considered a feast for my eyes. Don't expect it. Why haven't you come yet? Zhu Zhanji was so anxious that he couldn't help but ask the eunuch next to him in a low voice, holding a red silk. The eunuch was about to answer when suddenly he heard a sharp explosion outside. Sun Ruowei, Hu Shanxiang, bow in. Not far away, 2 women walked hand in hand, dressed in luxurious attire but unable to surpass Tianjiao's unparalleled beauty. They were being led by palace maids and slowly approached Zhu Zhanji. Amazing! The rumor is not false, we must see a stunning beauty. The courtiers passed it on by word of mouth, their expressions filled with excitement and uncertainty. It's hard to imagine that there are still women in the world who are charming and unremarkable. If it weren't for Zhu Di's mild cough as a reminder, they might have forgotten about the wedding of the crown prince and lost their composure in their words. But from the bottom of his heart, Zhu Di's vanity was still greatly satisfied. After all, after the rebellion, these people were obedient and secretly unhappy, and even had to curse the rebels. But now, no one can sincerely lament. Your Majesty is so lucky, the Crown Prince is so lucky, and the Zhu family is so lucky. As Zhu Zhanji watched the two beauties getting closer to him, his heart also tightened. At this moment it was already clear sky for thousands of miles, but suddenly a strong wind blew up, rolling up a patch of dust, and the red clothes of Sun Ruowei and her companions fluttered. Even the red silk that the eunuch was dragging in his hand disappeared with the strong wind in an instant. This is the inauspicious sign of a big wedding. All the ministers were dumbfounded, including Zhu Di sitting in a high position, with a hint of anger added to his usually calm face. Yang Shiqi glanced sideways and said, "The people from the Ministry of Rites shouldn't give an explanation. Today, as promised, is a day of great fortune. How could a strong wind sweep through the city and black clouds crush it?" Yang Shiqi quickly stepped forward to make a bow, his expression panicked. "Your Majesty, I observe the stars at night. The stars gather, with the bright star in the center as the leader, and the light is weak. This is a great omen of bowing down and bowing to the throne, and the obedience of all. In theory, the bright stars wrapped in the stars should represent His Highness Taisun, but for some unknown reason." Yang Shiqi was still pondering, but Zhu Di had no intention of listening. "All right, hurry up and welcome the newlywed Taisun in. Don't suffer from the strong wind outside. Such a natural anomaly, it's uncertain whether the Tianshui Dam will open or not, and we still have to discharge floodwaters." A few people were about to leave when they saw the situation, but the strong wind was blowing hard, making it extremely difficult to move forward. A few people with weaker bodies were actually blown back a few steps. The Zhu Gaoxiu brothers, who were watching the excitement, casually joked, "Shouldn't it be God who disagrees with this marriage?" Zhu Gaosui couldn't help but agree with a strange tone. "This is the engagement our good nephew made to him by his father when he was granted the title of Emperor Taizuan. Now that he is born with a strange vision, I'm afraid God not only disagrees with the marriage, but also." The two brothers deliberately stood next to Zhu Zhanji, speaking softly. The mockery in it is self-evident. Including others, there is also a lot of discussion. Is it because the heavens are not beautiful? Or is it that Tai Sundi doesn't match? Or is he not worthy of those two beauties? The sound was chaotic, rising and falling one after another, making it difficult to hear who said it, but it could vaguely be heard. Slightly clenching his fist, a sense of shame and anger instantly surged in his heart. Zhu Zhanji gritted his teeth and angrily cursed in a low voice, "You useless trash. Even a strong wind can hinder your footsteps. I hope you can protect our country." As he spoke, he waved his hand and strode against the wind, each step as firm as a rock. Not only to welcome the two ladies, but also to save face. If he cannot get married smoothly, Zhu Zhanji will inevitably be criticized and become a joke. In sharp contrast to those who were blown back by the wind, Zhu Zhanji bravely stood up and moved forward halfway. Watching Sun Ruowei and her companions sway left and right like willows in the wind. Just a little short. Zhu Zhanji gritted his teeth, his expression gradually becoming difficult, and the distance became closer and closer. At this moment, a loud noise came from the sky, and a flash of fire and lightning swooped down. Before everyone could react, suddenly a cry of surprise came from the crowd. "That direction, it seems to be Ming Shaoling. Thunder shouldn't have hit Taizu's tomb." On the day of the wedding, electric shock to the ancestral tomb is the true omen of great calamity. Zhu Di's heart trembled, but he suddenly stood up, with a hint of suspicion in his tiger's eyes. Taking a deep breath, he murmured softly, "Dad, do you just want to see the throne pass down in your son's generation?" At this moment, Zhu Zhanji rushed straight to Sun Ruowei and Hu Shanxiang's side, grabbed their hands, and said, "Let's go, enter the main hall." "Wait." Hu Shanxiang broke free from his hand with a flick of his gaze, staring straight in the direction of Ming Shaoling. He murmured to himself, "A natural anomaly, a strong wind, lightning and thunder, this direction. Is it him? What is he?" In order to make this trip, Zhu Zhanji ate a mouthful of dust, and now he no longer has any energy, as if he had walked through the desert. When I was in a hurry, I felt even more impatient when I heard her fragmented thoughts. "Let's go, you're so thin and weak. Be careful not to be swept away by the wind," he shouted in a low voice after tugging and tugging. No. It wasn't swept away by the wind, he came to pick me up. Shanxiang couldn't control his emotions, so he threw off his hand and unexpectedly knelt down and kowtowed, saying loudly, "Your Majesty, please accept it. Shanxiang has already found a place to belong. Now that my beloved is coming to pick me up, I'm afraid I won't be able to marry His Highness Taizun. Now, it's one step ahead." Speaking, Shanxiang walked against the wind in the direction of Ming Shaoling. Despite several difficulties, she still couldn't stop her progress. Only the phrase, "cannot get married, pursue what you love," was brought to everyone's ears by the strong wind. In the presence, except for the wind, thunder, and electric shock, there was a complete silence. Everyone looked at each other, their eyes undoubtedly filled with fear and disbelief. If I understand correctly, Emperor Taizu and Zhu Zhanji was dumped during his wedding. Zhu Zhanji's face turned pale, and before he could react more, Shanxiang had already traveled a distance. Absurd. Zhu Di's gaze narrowed slightly and he spoke coldly. As a grandson, how could there be such a scandal today? How ridiculous. But what worries Zhu Di even more at this moment is indeed his father's tomb. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and check the situation in the direction of Ming Shaoling. As soon as the vanguard left, Zhu Di privately gave a faint command to the royal guards, "Follow Shanxiang and see who she is going to meet." Suddenly, with a cold expression in his eyes, he said, "No matter who it is, there is no forgiveness for killing. King Outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 2. The Transformation of the Imperial Mausoleum. Is Taizu reincarnated? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ming Shaoling, the main tomb chamber, features a young man in green standing in the center. His clothes fluttered, and all the electric lights in all directions condensed into his body. Amazingly, the young man seemed to have a layer of golden light around him, even if struck by lightning, it did not harm him at all, as if tickling. And in a nearby corner, an old man with disheveled hair and a long and thin horse face was hiding behind the stone coffin, looking up. In his expression, there seemed to be surprise and an indescribable emotion. Until the lightning dissipated, Zhu Yunxi folded his hands and slowly exhaled a breath of fresh air, while the surrounding golden light also dimmed until it disappeared. Everything returned to tranquility, and the only thing that could prove the fatal scene just now was the large hole on the top of Ming Shaoling's head that was struck by thunder. "Old man, come out now, it's over." Slightly moving his muscles and bones, Zhu Yunxi waved his divine hand. Seemingly casual movements, but in an instant, a gust of wind swept away the fine stones that had originally scattered on the chair. He sat down on the clean chair, picked up a banana and nibbled it in his mouth. Confirming safety, the person behind the sarcophagus landed in front of him with a displeasure and sat down in a nearby position. But those shrewd eyes kept scrutinizing Zhu Yunxi back and forth, after experiencing what happened just now. "Are you really okay?" "It's okay, it's just a disaster that must go through during the transformation period. For me now, it's just a tickle." In fact, Zhu Yunxi was an authentic traveler, and he was also dressed in clothing, replacing Zhu Biao's fifth son at a young age, with his own name Zhu Yunxi. Speaking of which, it was also unlucky. At that time, Zhu Yunxi had been living in his father's tomb and had just been appointed as the Prince of Ouning, giving him a residence and finally having a place to live. Just a few days later, a big fire broke out in the mansion, destroying everything. Zhu Yunxi was well aware that even if Zhu Di was talented and strategic, he would not allow the descendants of Prince Yuan to exist, posing any threat to his throne. So, the true cause of that fire needs to be considered. Anyway, He is the only brother of the Zhu Biao family left, and the old Zhu who loves Zhu Biao is also gone. Zhu Yunxi naturally has no capital to compete. I had planned to secretly leave and spend the rest of my life under cover, but unexpectedly he found out that he had received a gift from a blue star. Full level of intelligence. No matter what you learn, it's easy to understand and even unforgettable, and you can also perform various magical spells. However, in just a few short years, his mind was filled with various miraculous martial arts from all over the world, and he even practiced the path of cultivating immortals. Good guy, I can even cultivate immortality myself. Why are you still competing for the throne of Lashizi? Is longevity not fragrant? From then on, Zhu Yunxi, who was extremely excited, began to devote himself to research and even moved into the Ming Shaoling Mausoleum. Not only is there no one to disturb, but there are also offerings to fill the stomach. In just a few short years, Zhu Yunxi's cultivation has made rapid progress, flying to heaven and earth, entering the underwater sea, almost omnipotent. Undoubtedly, he is my great-grandson. Now that he has taken his cultivation to the next level, he may be able to live the same life as heaven and endure for eternity. Come on, Grandpa peeled the banana and ate another one. I've put in so much effort just now, don't be hungry. Zhu Yunxi was helpless, and with his current cultivation level, his realm could rival that of the Earth Emperor. Not only does it have an eternal lifespan, but it also eliminates the need to rely on mundane objects to make a living. However, the old man's enthusiasm is truly irresistible. Taking the banana, Zhu Yunxi said helplessly, "Old man, don't just brag at me. You have to work hard yourself. The mental technique I gave you to practice well has remained at a basic level and can only guarantee a lifespan of up to 100 years. If this continues, after that 100 years, I will be alone again, which is very boring." This sentence actually makes people feel wronged. It's not that my old man doesn't work hard, but rather that he has a weak heart. We didn't expect that the younger generation of the Zhu family could still produce a talent for cultivating immortals. The person who sighed repeatedly and was said to be depressed was the founding emperor of the Ming Dynasty, Zhu Yuanzhang. And this Ming Shaoling can be considered his home after his death. Why did he come back to life? It was not Zhu Yunxi's intentional move either. Just after learning those heaven and earth techniques, Zhu Yunxi began to study the art of alchemy. After all, he is the only one in this world who cultivates immortality, and some miscellaneous skills are also necessary to learn. Just because he had just started practicing alchemy, even Zhu Yunxi dared not test the medicine like he was stunned. At that time, old Zhu, who had been discovered by Zhu Yunxi due to his passing, became the best choice. It's just unexpected, or maybe because he was fed too many pills, old Zhu woke up later. So, in the lonely Ming Shaoling, there was another living person. Although it was an unintentional move by Zhu Yunxi, facing this great-grandson who once again gave himself vitality, old Zhu not only treated him as a family member, but also as a benefactor. In his year of survival, he thought to himself that it would be great if he could watch him continue to build a bright world with his own hands. I thought I was just talking nonsense, but one day after my death, I was turned into a reality by Zhu Yunxi. And over the years, they have naturally not been confined to Ming Shaoling every day. With Zhu Yunxi's divine escape of thousands of miles, he took Zhu Yuanzhang and traveled thousands of miles across mountains and rivers in just a few years, admiring the beauty of the scenery and seeing the scenery of the people. Among them are bustling, as well as endless suffering. Old Zhu wanted to lend a hand several times, but Zhu Yunxi had already explained the rules to him not to interfere in external affairs. The two of them have already transcended the secular world, so naturally they cannot rashly intervene and change anything. The world has its ups and downs, everything is predetermined by fate. There are many injustices, can't we overthrow the world and start over? After sighing from afar, Zhu Yuanzhang let out a light sigh and said, "Good grandson, I went outside a few days ago to play some wild game. Let's try it." Zhu Yunxi's cultivation does not require eating, but Zhu Yuanzhang cannot. He not only needs to eat, but also needs to eat with a delicious taste. Although I don't have much cultivation, it's still easy to occasionally go out and hunt a few wild animals and make some seasonings. As he spoke, he piled up the firewood he had saved before and practiced his mnemonic for a while. The flames remained motionless, and he couldn't help but look at Zhu Yunxi in frustration. "Good grandson, can you help me?" Zhu Yunxi couldn't help but laugh and cry, and he placed the wooden stick in his hand and rubbed it against the ground. A string of small flames shone brightly. The smoke from the kitchen was slowly rising from the hole above the Ming Shaoling mausoleum that had been cut open by lightning. The two of them were leisurely here, but the people outside were so scared that they almost dropped their chin. "Damn it! Ming Shaoling seems to be on fire, what a big smoke. Hurry up! Hurry up! If we delay any further, Taizu's dragon body will be reduced to ashes." Standing at the height of the city tower, Zhu Di looked at the black mist rising in the distance, and his expression couldn't help but become a little nervous. "Dad! Quickly, send some more people to bring water over and make sure to protect my father's dragon body." Zhu Di was so anxious that he was sweating profusely, but he didn't have the courage to step into that place. Or rather, he doesn't know what identity he should appear in Ming Shaoling. Is it Zhu Di's fourth son? Or is it the identity of this emperor who speaks ill of himself? The distance is getting closer, and the gate of Ming Shaoling is tightly closed, requiring dozens of people to push open the stone gate. The person in front is responsible for pushing, while the person behind is carrying a bucket and ready to put out the fire at any time. Just while waiting, an inexplicable fragrance drifted in Qingming Outing and Happy Reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 3. Uninvited Guests. Immortal in the Tomb. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Did you all smell it? It seems to have a meat flavor. Is it difficult? Everyone looked at each other in horror, with only one thought. Perhaps it was Ming Taizu's dragon body that had been roasted. Grandmate, at the thought of this, everyone present almost scared to pee. Let's go up with some more people and quickly break through the stone gate. What's going on? Zhu Yuanzhang was roasting the little rabbit happily, feeling a bit noisy and even a slight movement in his ear. He instinctively turned to look at Zhu Yunxi and said, "Good grandson, have you heard any unusual movements?" However, there was no response received. With a light sigh, Zhu Yuanzhang felt quite helpless and said, "Why have you entered meditation again?" In this state, Zhu Yunxi is self-closed and has no perception of external things. Unless he wants to wake up on his own, no one can scream. Of course, there is no need to worry about him encountering danger. This kid has a 10-fold golden body, and even if the axe is swung, it may not hurt him at all. Well, I guess it's those snakes, insects, and mice again. There are a bunch of dead people living in the Ming Shaoling Mausoleum, and it's not the time for worship. Who has nothing to do to make a fuss about here? Moreover, with officers and soldiers guarding around, it is even less likely that there are any bold tomb robbers. "Oh, my little rabbit, it smells so fragrant, bring some salt and some cumin powder." Zhu Yuanzhang took out 2 pieces of rags from his pocket and carefully opened them. One was fine salt, and the other was cumin powder. He grabbed some and sprinkled them on top like a precious treasure. These 2 things are so delicious that you can't find the same one in the whole world. He did these things for Zhu Yunxi. No matter what it is, even a bowl of porridge, as long as you sprinkle this small ingredient into it, you can eat something different. Outside the Ming Shaoling Mausoleum, after some effort, the great stone gate was broken open and a group of people rushed in. "Quick, split up and find the source of the fire." Another group of people followed me to the main tomb to rescue the Taizu dragon body. Everyone rushed towards each tomb chamber, not daring to rest for a moment. As the footsteps grew heavier, Zhu Yuanzhang's roasted rabbit, which was about to be put to his mouth, also froze at this moment. He quickly tilted his ears to listen. That commotion was so lively and eye-catching that it couldn't be ignored. No, someone is really here. Zhu Yunxi's eyebrows furrowed tightly, but he must not let anyone look at him, otherwise he must be scared out of his wits. And more importantly, I have no way to explain why I am still alive. At this moment, there was no need to worry about eating roasted rabbits. Zhu Yunxi tried to wake up Zhu Yunxi, but he couldn't even make a sound. He wanted to move the person to a hidden place, but the golden light of Zhu Yunxi's protective body during meditation instantly bounced him off the ground, causing excruciating pain. Fortunately, I have also cultivated a basic immortal technique with some foundation, otherwise such a level of flying would cause my buttocks to bloom. However, just as he was about to try harder, he suddenly seemed to remember something and stopped his hand movements. You should know that he had been trying to persuade Zhu Yunxi to inherit the Ming Dynasty, but he was refused by Zhu Yunxi. After all, in the eyes of Zhu Yunxi today, being an emperor, apart from being a laborer to distract his attention, has no benefits at all. Nowadays, the world is almost accessible to him, and there is no one to stop him. His heart is only filled with immortality. But now it's a good opportunity for Lao Zhu. If Zhu Di discovers Zhu Yunxi, it's probably because Zhu Yunxi hasn't entered the world. At that time, in order to avoid future troubles, it would be natural for me to make another brilliant appearance and give the throne to my obedient grandson. Good grandson, it's not that grandpa didn't help you, there's really no place to hide it. Zhu Yunxi rubbed his buttocks and got up, chuckled, looked around, and finally ran into his own coffin. Just pretend to be dead again. After some effort, before closing the coffin lid, he couldn't help but glance at Zhu Yunxi again. Still with the demeanor of a banished immortal, yet possessing the demeanor of a king of the earth, I couldn't help but feel a hint of cunning in my eyes. He smiled and said, "Good grandson, I know you don't want to be in the mortal world, but this is fate, right? There are some things that you can't just avoid if you want." In just an instant, the group of people burst into the main tomb chamber, their expressions approaching madness. When seeing the small flames of roasted rabbits, one person reflexively exclaimed in terror, "Fire! Hurry up and put out the fire." Next, dozens of pots of water will be poured upwards, the fire that finally started, you little brats. In the gloomy coffin, Zhu Yunxi gritted his teeth in anger. The royal guards also gradually realized. That's not right, why is this one fire? It shouldn't have been burning everywhere, burning endlessly. Thinking about it, suddenly someone exclaimed, "Look, there's someone here." Looking for the sound with his gaze, he saw Zhu Yunxi sitting cross-legged, covered in light gauze scattered on the ground, with a cold yet handsome appearance that was particularly eye-catching. Is this alive or dead? Some were trembling, while others looked bewildered. This is the Ming Shaoling Mausoleum, completely enclosed. Living people cannot enter and dead people cannot leave. How could there be someone sitting upright here? Others were extremely frightened, but such a divine expression unconsciously made them take a second look. The key is that this person has fair skin, which can be easily broken by blowing, and doesn't look like a dead person at all. Ming Shaoling has been closed for several years, and if there were a living person, it would be even more terrifying. Everyone was discussing, either in fear or surprise, with constant noise. What are you panicking about? It's nothing promising. Ji Gang angrily rebuked in a low voice, took a hard step forward, drew out a dagger, and gently pressed it against his nose. A burst of clear air exhaled, and the dagger was instantly coated with a layer of mist and frost. Live. Ji Gang was so scared that he almost spat out a fragrance, and the dagger in his hand fell to the ground with a clang. There are really living people inside the Ming Shaoling Mausoleum. How could it be? Ji Gang quickly shook his head, appearing somewhat confused. I stepped on my foot and almost slipped. I looked at the joint and said, "Roast rabbit. How could there be roasted rabbits here? Is it him?" He couldn't help but examine Zhu Yunxi. Zhu Yuanzhang looked out through the small hole in the coffin, which was heartbreaking. Wasting food is a deadly crime. This is the person trained by that bastard from the 4th generation. A well-done roasted rabbit, so fragrant and cute, even if you don't eat it, don't pay attention to it. Zhu Yuanzhang wanted to cry without tears, he just wanted to fill his stomach. Is it that difficult? Look, there's such a big hole up there. The smoke just now must have spread out through the hole. They only realized now that the tomb, which was supposed to be dark, had become slightly brighter due to the skylight there. Someone has derived a reasonable logic. The big hole was opened by lightning, and the smoke they saw was because Zhu Yunxi was roasting rabbits. But I still haven't figured it out why a living person, looking around with some signs of life, is afraid he still lives here. After a moment of silence, Ji Gang ordered, "Go to every corner of the Imperial tomb and search carefully to see if there is any connection with the outside world. Anyway, this person residing in the Imperial tomb must be a villain. As for the rest, let's wake him up and ask him, then we'll know. Bring a basin of water over." Holding that basin of water, Ji Gang is about to pour it on. At this moment, Zhu Yunxi woke up from meditation and felt the danger approaching. He just squinted his eyes and knocked over the basin, giving Ji Gang a full-body bath. "What kind of people are you? I just entered meditation and wanted to see the strength to improve my cultivation. How could this group of people not talk about martial arts? Conducting a surprise attack." As he spoke, the corner of his eye fell on Zhu Yuanzhang's coffin. Even with only one small hole, he breathed a sigh of relief when he felt that Zhu Yuanzhang was fine. But then, he seemed to remember something again and couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. Lao Zhu, this guy, really causes trouble for himself. "Commander, are you okay?" A few people approached and became concerned, but were pushed away by Ji Gang. "Is there anything you can't see?" Immediately, he glared angrily at Zhu Yunxi and said, "This sentence should have been asked by the governor, right? Who are you? Why did you appear in the Ming Shaoling Mausoleum? What is your purpose?" King Ming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 4. Old Zhu's coffin opened. Zhu Di, who is feeling guilty. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At first meeting, there was a series of questioning, and even Zhu Yunxi himself was still confused. But look at their attire, embroidered spring knives, and flying fish costumes. Zhu Yunxi knew clearly that these people were the royal guards. In other words, they were people of Zhu Di and came at his command. Could it be that they were alarmed when they returned to the crossing just now? Zhu Yunxi was still pondering when Ji Gang suddenly ordered, "Regardless of who you are, stay in the Imperial tomb for a long time and be sneaky. Take it back and slowly review it. You guys, go open the coffin and see how Taizu is doing." If it were on weekdays, I wouldn't dare to open the coffin even if I gave Ji Gang 200 courage. However, in the current situation, if the dragon body of Ming Taizu is really injured, the people present may have been executed by 10 tribes. Therefore, the outline must be confirmed with one's own eyes. As the words fell, a few people stood behind Zhu Yunxi, about to grab him, but suddenly a majestic aura burst out from him, which made people feel a bit intimidated. You may see it, but you must not linger. Don't mistake yourself. Zhu Yunxi gave them a glare. With one's own strength, one can completely solve them cleanly and efficiently. But they are actually the royal guards. They don't want to make a big deal out of it, so if it's not a big deal, they just casually create identities and say they are the guardians of the mausoleum, turning big things into small ones. The other few people opened the coffin and saw Zhu Yuanzhang inside, but were stunned for a long time. The atmosphere suddenly fell into silence, and his heart tightened. Why don't you speak? Maybe there's something wrong with Taizu's dragon body. He glared fiercely at Zhu Yunxi and said, I tell you, if Taizu's dragon body is missing, you will definitely die without a place to bury yourself. He quickly stepped up the steps and looked inside the coffin, but was momentarily dumbfounded. The body of Zhu Yuanzhang is not a big deal, and even a bit too peaceful. After so many years, my physical body may have already dissipated, leaving only a pile of bones. However, in reality, Zhu Yuanzhang's face was rosy and his delicate pores could be seen. Is this really a dead person? A few people were stunned and their thoughts were restless for a long time. Even with his eyes closed, Zhu Yuanzhang could feel those pairs of eyes swirling around him, which was so annoying. Stepping on his roasted rabbit, I dare to look straight at my oath and even argue around him. Do you really think I'm dead? At this moment, a burst of gurgling sound exploded out of thin air. Zhu Yuanzhang felt bitter in his heart. After finishing a bite without eating, his upper abdomen began to protest. He seemed to be crazy in his heart, with all sorts of emotional fluctuations, but at this moment he could only replace it with a calm lying face. Ah! What noise? Is it that Taizu is angry? We must have offended so much. Since Taizu is fine, let's quickly cover the coffin. Grandpa Taizu, please don't be angry. After returning, I will burn incense and worship Buddha for you every day. After all, they believe it's the anger of the undead more than the thought of a corpse going hungry. Ji Gang dared not neglect it and quickly asked someone to cover the coffin, but his heart was restless. It seems as if 1 second later, I will go down to see Zhu Yuanzhang. Quickly, bring this person along and let's go back and report. After speaking, they didn't even give Zhu Yunxi a chance to speak and hurriedly left. But they didn't notice at all that in the dark, a woman in wedding dress was quietly watching all of this. Indeed, it's him. An indescribable emotion grew and spread wildly in Shanxiang's heart, opening up a whole spring. However, this kind of joy was only for a moment. Looking at Zhu Yunxi, who was wrapped in the royal guards, she felt extremely anxious and said, No, my benefactor is in trouble. It's just that I just quit my marriage, going back now is like falling into a trap. The grace that can save lives is as great as a mountain, and besides, I was originally running for him, how can I remain indifferent? On the Fengtian Hall, those festive red cloth strips are still decorated everywhere, but there is less lively atmosphere, giving it a unique sense of desolation. Grandpa Huang, you must make the decision for your grandson in this matter. It's really too much. Shanxiang's woman insults not only her grandson, but also the entire Zhu family and the entire royal family. At this point, there were no outsiders around, only Zhu Di and his sons, along with Zhu Zhanji and Sun Ruowei, the grand princess who had hastily walked through the ceremony. Without waiting for Zhu Di to speak, Zhu Gaoxiu sneered and said, Good nephew, you don't usually have a bright mind. You are talented in both literature and martial arts, and your father greatly appreciates you. But now, you can't even look down on your daughter. In law. How fortunate are you to let your father preside over justice for you? If it spreads, I'm afraid it's going to make people laugh. Zhu Gaosui suppressed a smile and sang the double reed with Zhu Gaoxiu, second brother, how could you say that? Who would have known that Shanxiang had a different personality? Such an excellent imperial grandson didn't like him, and his thoughts didn't fall on anyone. This guy is even worse, isn't he cursing around the corner? He said that Zhu Zhanji was not as outstanding as the man Shanxiang was interested in, which is why he was dumped. At this moment, both Zhu Zhanji and Zhu Gaoqi, who were the crown prince, felt a burning sensation on their faces and were hit with a crackling sound. It should have been a time of endless glory, but it has suffered a great shame. Who can bear this matter? Zhu Gaoqi scolded in a low voice, second brother, third brother, please speak a few words less. The top priority is to solve the current ugly matter, as well as the matter of Ming Shaoling. Coincidentally speaking of this, the eunuch outside came in to report, Your Majesty, the Jin Yi Wei Ji Gang is here to meet, bringing a very handsome man. Zhu Di's eyes drooped, a handsome man. Could it be Shanxiang's good relationship? Didn't you mention killing someone directly? Why did you bring it back? Is it because they feel ashamed that they haven't lost enough? But it's already here, and it's too late to kill now. Suppressing his anger, Zhu Di waved his hand and said, "Let them in." As Ji Gang strode in, Zhu Yunxi, who was surrounded behind him, gradually caught the attention of everyone. Just one glance is enough to amaze the world. Zhu Yunxi's green shirt drooped down, as if it carried a refreshing breeze, drifting 100 times first. If the strong pine stands proudly on the green mountains, it is more like a leisurely fairy riding on the clouds. Impeccable facial features are just recognition of him personally, but if you really want to describe his divine appearance, you may not find words that match. What about Song Yu and Panan? I'm afraid they would pale in front of Zhu Yunxi. Just now they were thinking, why do we need to add the word handsome in the notification? It wasn't until they saw it with their own eyes that they realized it was a reservation. Zhu Gaoxiu and the other looked at each other, feeling a deep emotion in their hearts. Not to mention, although he is a man, he is beautiful but not delicate, without losing his masculine charm. Even a woman may be moved by him, and it is reasonable for Shanxiang to like him. This is what is called heaven-made and earth-made, golden children in jade maidens. Zhu Zhanji is really not enough to look at in front of him. Even Sun Ruowei at this moment felt an involuntary acceleration in her heart. In amazement, Ji Gang clasped his fists and said, "I see your majesty." Although it was confirmed that Zhu Yunxi was Shanxiang's best friend, Zhu Di still followed the process and asked, "Who is he?" However, the answer is often unexpected. "Your Majesty, he is the one who ignited the fire in Ming Shaoling." Qing Ming Outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 5. Do you not believe me and still want my life? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhu Di's body trembled violently, and his face became even worse. What? The Imperial tomb fire is not a natural disaster, but a man-made one. Ji Gang added, exactly, when our people rushed over, they would light a fire and roast rabbits inside, and it was done in front of the coffin of Emperor Taizu. This is very disrespectful. During the conversation, Ji Gang glared at Zhu Yunxi with hatred. Zhu Gaosui had sharp eyes and asked curiously, "What about the water on your body?" He also spilled it. Speaking of this, Ji Gang was also filled with anger. Who did he provoke and who was drenched in it? Zhu Gaoxiu couldn't help but laugh and glanced at Zhu Gaoqi, "Big brother, the wife your son is going to marry is really capable." Not only did he disobey his husband and have an affair with a man, but the man who had an affair also settled in the imperial tomb and ate meat, even splashing water on the commander of the royal guards. We used to envy you for having 2 daughters-in-law like Flowers and Jade, but now that we've seen them, we have to shy away and not provoke them. Standing beside Zhu Zhanji, Sun Ruowei, who appeared somewhat restrained, was somewhat internalized. Faced with these words, Zhu Gaoji, who was usually honest, would not say a word at this time because he had no words to refute. On the surface, they were holding on to Shanxiang and saying yes, but both inside and outside, they were mocking him and Zhu Zhanji and his son. The Zhu family is ashamed, are you 2 brothers watching their own jokes? Zhu Di slapped the table and shouted softly, instantly scaring the 2 of them into clenching their lips and teeth. If you don't say it, then don't say it. Anyway, Zhu Zhanji and his son were severely beaten in the face today, so there's no need to run away with this matter. Upon thinking about it, Zhu Yunxi, who was already handsome, surprisingly looked a little more pleasing to the eye. Ming Shaoling is sealed and there is no entrance except for the main entrance. How did you get in? Ji Gang quickly explained, Your Majesty, I have already sent people to search the imperial tomb everywhere to see if there are any other entrances. I believe it will be soon. Get out of here, I didn't ask you. Zhu Di's eyes narrowed slightly, and his gaze became even colder. Are people here? I won't judge them myself. I was already full of anger, but now whoever causes trouble is unlucky. When it comes to Zhu Di, he is the son who bears the most resemblance to Zhu Yuanzhang. He is known for his personality, temperament, and strength. Even bystanders couldn't help but be shocked by the oppressive feeling of his anger. On the other hand, Zhu Yunxi remained calm in his eyes and looked up calmly to say. In response to your Majesty's words, I am only an admirer of Emperor Taizu. In order to demonstrate my admiration, I opened a small entrance southeast of the Ming Shaoling Mausoleum and quietly entered to accompany Emperor Taizu, guarding the tomb with living people. The voice was faint, the tone was gentle and composed, and the expressionless expression showed neither servility nor arrogance. Such an attitude is completely different from others in front of oneself. Not to mention that he is currently in a state of anger, even when he is usually happy, his own son appears to be smiling in front of him, but his behavior also shows a bit of restraint. On the one hand, it was due to the pressure of Zhu Di, and on the other hand, it was due to the hierarchy of superiors and subordinates. He is the ruler of a country, and all the people in the world are ministers. He rightfully accepts the reverence and worship of these people. But Zhu Yunxi is different. He is always calm and orderly, fearless of any detail. Although seemingly harmless to humans and animals in their early 20s, their exuding demeanor inexplicably gives people a sense of submission. This feeling can only be felt by the strong when facing stronger people. A moment of palpitations surged in his heart, and Zhu Di clenched his fists as if his father was standing in front of him. Quiet. Quiet as the sea. Zhu Gaoxiu didn't know what he was pointing at and leaned his shoulder towards Zhu Gaosui, whispering, "Third, do you see anything? Why isn't our dad talking?" I guess he was moved by this kid's behavior. At a young age, may the living guard the tomb, but cannot they be moved? Zhu Gaosui gave him a disdainful glance and said, "How can I guess Dad's thoughts correctly?" When the atmosphere was deadlocked, Ji Gang received another round of notifications. "It's really a coincidence that you came." He gritted his head and cautiously broke the deadlock. "Your Majesty, the royal guards have come to report that they have indeed found an opening in Ming Shaoling. The opening was 2 feet high and 1 foot wide, and there was also a copper door installed, which must be the reason why he came and went freely in Ming Shaoling." "What? 2 feet high and 1 foot wide, which is even more spacious than the entrance of a small courtyard. The key is, he actually installed a door." Zhu Di's beard blew and he immediately became furious. "What nonsense! The Ming Shaoling Mausoleum is all solidly built, and with so many guards, how could such a large door appear out of thin air?" Ji Gang did not speak. "What is the truth?" "I'm afraid I have to ask the party involved, Zhu Yunxi." Everyone's gaze fell entirely on that faint shadow. Zhu Yunxi's face rarely showed a hint of embarrassment, and he whispered, "Of course I personally opened it." As for why no one noticed, perhaps it was the thunderstorm that night, or maybe the guards found a good place to shelter from the rain and were not present. Of course, when it comes to that door, it was not originally there, mainly because of Lao Zhu. He was worried that one day tomb raiders would come in, and even though he was diligent and frugal, he didn't want anyone to put any burial objects with him. However, he didn't want strangers to disturb his place of residence, so he put them on. Nonsense. He can believe that the caretaker is lazy, but he dares to believe that he has attacked the Imperial tomb barehanded. Even if you chop your hands and grind the bones, it would be great if you could make a small pit, let alone a door that is 2 feet high. In an instant, even Zhu Di, who had always been skilled in nourishing qi, had a sudden and intense chest rise and fall. The anger seemed to have reached the pinnacle, and even the sound of his gasping breath could be heard. After much thought, Zhu Di sneered and nodded, "Okay, it's really good. I've figured it out. Are you treating us like monkeys, kid? Okay, since you keep saying you're breaking the door with your bare hands, then break it again in front of me. If you don't have this ability, it's a crime of deceiving you. Don't blame me for being impolite. Zhu Di's plan was sharp, and there seemed to be a murderous intent in his words. Don't say I'm making things difficult for you. If you can break the door of the Fengtian Palace, then I'll believe you. Zhu Di was full of confidence. Although the door of the Fengtian Hall was made of wood, it was as firm as a rock, with a palm width and thickness. Want to break through the door with bare hands and talk nonsense? This way Zhu Yunxi twisted his neck slightly, and a hint of helplessness flashed in his eyes. At this point, it seems that he can only show some supernatural powers. After all, he can still use his innate divine power to explain his hand chopping at the door. If he really provokes Zhu Di, then trouble will probably continue to flow. Thinking of this, he turned lightly and elegantly, with his palm resting on the door. Oh, the stinky kid is still pretending to be a fairy. Zhu Gaoxiu hugged him with both hands, unable to see how capable he was of pretending. The lingering sound did not dissipate, and Zhu Yunxi only lightly touched the door. The next moment, after a loud bang, the gate of Fengtian Hall instantly exploded, accompanied by a burst of dust, causing the people around to retreat in fear. Only Zhu Di's expression showed a hint of surprise, which he couldn't believe. The door is really broken. Moreover, in his calm state, it was as if with a gentle touch, the door broke open. How is it? Your Majesty satisfied? Have you seen it? Do you believe it? Zhu Yunxi withdrew his hand and gently dusted off the dust on his body. Despite the chaos around him, he was the only one who was doing well on his own. I originally wanted to disguise myself as a little fan brother of Emperor Taizu to deceive him, but now you are pushing me step by step, no wonder he is impolite. King Ming Outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 6. He is the King of Ouning and cannot be killed. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Faced with his cold questioning, there was silence all around, but Zhu Zhanji regained his senses, but his teeth were itching with hatred. What is the situation? Why is this door so broken? Is it difficult because of long-term disrepair? Are you joking? This person is absolutely not allowed to stay. If you can't become friends, you'll be a strong enemy, let alone hate yourself for taking away your wife. He suddenly stood up and roared coldly, someone, this kind of madman is openly committing crimes in the Fengtian Temple, disturbing the Holy Master. He has ulterior motives and will be arrested immediately. Under the command of Taisun, without waiting for Zhu Di to react more, the ready royal guards had already roared up. Can't afford to play. I don't know how to live or die. The atmosphere had reached this point, and Zhu Yunxi's delicate face, without any trace of the waves of time, couldn't help but feel a little unhappy at this moment. Under his long sleeves, he clenched his fists slightly, and a breath lingered around him. Even if not visible, the overwhelming sense of that aura makes those who are about to move hesitate. Lao Zhu, I'm here to save face for you. If you give face, you don't want face. Let's fight later, don't blame me for not being able to stop. Up there, what's going on there? Zhu Zhanji frowned and urged. His Highness Taisun, it's not that we're not up, it's that we can't move. For some reason, they inexplicably felt their legs weak and their legs and feet disobedient. It's like a subconscious thought reminding me. This person can't be provoked, can't be provoked. Even the disciplinary outline dare not act rashly at this moment. He could clearly feel that Zhu Yunxi now seemed different from when he first met. He exuded an indescribable aura of violence, and upon a touch, it was irreparable. You're afraid of even a little white face, something that's not promising. Bang! Zhu Zhanji was furious and rushed up to snatch the long sword from the hands of the royal guards. With a fierce aura, he left with Zhu Yunxi. Kid, kneel down. With a roar from Zhu Zhanji, a cold light suddenly appeared in the air, as it was about to fall on Zhu Yunxi's head. Without waiting for Zhu Yunxi to counterattack, a decisive move was made when suddenly a sharp sound came from outside. Leave someone behind with a knife. A figure rushed forward to Zhu Yunxi, spreading his arms and saying, Your Highness Taizun, you cannot kill him. He is the fifth son of Prince Yiwen, Prince Ouning. Zhu Zhanji waved his knife with all his might, but at this moment he couldn't stop the car. Although he didn't want Zhu Yunxi's life and used the back of the knife, if he hit Shanxiang, he was afraid it would take half of his life. However, at this moment, Zhu Yunxi let out a light sigh and took a step back, embracing Shanxiang like a leisurely stroll in the courtyard, narrowly avoiding the blow. The whole process is like being rehearsed 1,000 times. The scene was completely silent, and Zhu Zhanji pounced in the air, feeling a bit angry. At this point, how could he not see that Zhu Yunxi's skills were extremely extraordinary? He just can't swallow this breath. He slowly looked up at the person who had just made a sound. Although he was wearing a spring embroidery knife and a flying fish suit, his delicate face was clearly a woman. Moreover, this woman is particularly familiar. Shanxiang, you bitch, how dare you come back? With just one glance, Zhu Zhanji roared angrily and approached with his sword again. On my day of great joy, it was supposed to be a day of endless glory, but because of your face being ruined, I will kill you. Your Highness, help me. Shanxiang quickly turned around and spread a bed directly into Zhu Yunxi's arms, delicate like water, pitiful and touching. Especially the hair crown that accidentally slipped off just now, showcasing her delicate hair hanging down from the waist, it is even more beautiful and heart-stopping. Zhu Yunxi was about to take action, but he heard Zhu Di roar and say, Bastard, have you had enough trouble? Stop it for me. Zhu Di slapped a picture on the table, and a chill spread for thousands of miles, which was heart-wrenching. Zhu Zhanji's hands trembled in fear, and he almost knelt down. He looked back incredulously, Grandpa. I've said it before, he'll trust him as soon as he opens that door. Who allowed you to take action? I. Get out of here. Zhu Di's weather was uncertain, and a hint of surprise lingered for a long time. He looked straight at Shanxiang and said coldly, Say what you just said again. Zhu Yunxi also heard that. Carefully examining Shanxiang, it feels like we have met before, but the impression is not deep. How could she know his true identity after pretending to die in a fire and hiding in the world for many years? Shanxiang gritted his head and spoke out again, Only then did I say that his name is Zhu Yunxi, the Prince of Ouning whom you later personally conferred, and the fifth son of Prince Yiwen. Zhu Yunxi. After thinking about this name for a long time, Zhu Di still reminded Zhu Gaosui, Dad, it seems that Crown Prince Yiwen has a son named Zhu Yunxi. After you ascended the throne, you were granted the title of Prince Ouning. Zhu Yunxi's sense of existence has always been low. Regarding the matter of enfeoffment of the king, it was Zhu Gaosui who sorted out old ministers at that time, discovered and reminded them. Zhu Gaoqi suddenly thought to himself, Dad, this is indeed the case. After Zhu Yunxi was enfeoffed as the Prince of Ouning and moved to the palace for a few days, the entire mansion unfortunately caught fire and burned for several days and nights. There should be no survivors. In fact, they are not sure, and Zhu Di's heart is even more uncertain. For Zhu Yunxi, his impression is very shallow. Because compared to Zhu Biao's other sons, he is young and weak, with no sense of threat. Zhu Di still understands gratitude. Thinking about Zhu Biao's brotherly love for him, he originally planned to leave a legacy for his lineage, which is Zhu Yunxi. Later, a king was granted a fiefdom, and although there was no fiefdom, there was also a peaceful mansion, which was better than living by guarding his father's tomb. Unexpectedly, Zhu Yunxi was unlucky. After only staying for a few days, the entire royal mansion was engulfed by a big fire. Regarding this matter, Zhu Di was also very angry and thoroughly investigated, but for some reason, there was no trace of human error found. In the end, all the officials responsible for this area could only be severely punished. It can only be said that Zhu Biao is unlucky, and heaven does not allow him to have an inheritance. But sometimes when I think of this, I feel a bit guilty in my heart. He will think of Zhu Biao's kindness to him, and he will think of himself being ungrateful and taking away his son's throne with his eyes slightly closed. Zhu Di took a deep breath and ignored the noise in his ear, continuing to ask, that big fire didn't breed humans or animals. How could you be sure he was Zhu Yunxi? My daughter and the Prince of Ouning were childhood playmates, and they had some interactions and were recognizable in appearance. In addition, a month before the wedding, my daughter was attacked in the Imperial palace and tied up in a courtyard. When someone wanted to use this opportunity to commit misconduct, King Ouning intervened to save her. At that time, the courtier was not sure about the other person's identity until she accidentally saw the birthmark on his wrist, which was exactly the same as when he was young, so she confirmed it. Shanxiang spoke loudly and heard the parties involved feel helpless. With these words, he suddenly had an impression. At that time, he was bored staying in Ming Shaoling and ran out to relax, coincidentally encountering the kidnapped Shanxiang. Adhering to the principle of not wanting to meddle, Zhu Yunxi had no intention of interfering, but unfortunately, he was seen by Shanxiang and begged for help. Thinking of a stunning woman, in the prime of her life, whose innocence had been destroyed, he finally moved his heart with compassion and couldn't bear to step forward to save her. Unexpectedly, it was just a chance encounter, but it was remembered by the other party in their heart. Zhu Di's heart couldn't calm down for a long time. He looked at Zhu Yunxi and said, "Take off your clothes." He remembers that during his lifetime, Zhu Biao boasted to himself that he had a son with a phoenix birthmark on his wrist. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 7. Taboos of the Old Zhu Family. Misfortune brings water from the east. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Although he is a commoner, Zhu Biao is also quite fond of him. Still constantly joking. If it were a daughter's family with a phoenix birthmark on her shoulder, there would definitely be great achievements. Thinking of these, Zhu Di's heart was like a raging wave, his gaze fixed on Zhu Yunxi. Large-scale family recognition scene. Sorry, I'm really not interested. Zhu Yunxi's heart is only about becoming an immortal. With a light sigh, Zhu Yunxi felt that continuing like this would only make things more and more complicated, so he had no choice but to say. Forget it, this young lady may have made a mistake, and your majesty actually hopes that I don't have a birthmark, right? The biggest similarity between Zhu Di and Zhu Yuanzhang is that they were both ruthless in their actions. Old Zhu used the excuse of killing the founding heroes out of fear of their power, while Zhu Di was worried about the threat to the throne and spared no effort to harm each other. So, starting from substance, Zhu Di certainly did not want that nephew to come back to life from the dead. And Zhu Yunxi deliberately pointed out this matter, which was actually telling Zhu Di that as long as the birthmark was not confirmed, his identity would not be confirmed, and naturally it would not cause him any trouble. However, Zhu Di doesn't seem to think so now. I'll ask you to open your sleeves. Zhu Di took a deep breath and spoke again in a deep voice. Don't lift it, do you have a way with me? Zhu Yunxi's gaze fell lightly on Zhu Di. If he was a fire, then Zhu Yunxi was a water, leaving him with nowhere to vent. That inexplicable sense of pressure, especially witnessing Zhu Yunxi's gentle breaking through the door of the Fengtian Hall. On the battlefield, with countless visitors, Zhu Di boasted of his exceptional skills. After witnessing the scene just now, he already knew one thing in his heart. This person can't be provoked. Zhu Yunxi yawned and said, as I said, I just want to be a free and idle person. Now that I'm leaving, don't blame me for being impolite if anyone tries to obstruct me. Just as he was about to turn around, a gust of strong wind suddenly arose, which was really strange. Zhu Yunxi's sleeves fluttered in the air. The crowd, who had already paid close attention to his wrist, also saw the red birthmark in an instant. Zhu Yunxi's eyebrows furrowed slightly, and the wild wind stopped dancing in an instant. His gaze fell leisurely in the direction not far away, and he instantly understood the origin of this strange wind. Without hesitation, he muttered in a low voice, "Stinky old man. It's not a big deal to watch the excitement." Without waiting for more reaction, a burst of exclamation came from behind, "It's really you." Zhu Di woke up from his seat, everything was fate's will. Zhu Yunxi had no choice but to climb up to your level of kinship. Zhu Di was stunned and confused on the spot. No wonder when he saw Zhu Yunxi, he had an inexplicable fear. It turned out that everything happened for a reason. He is really Zhu Biao's son, the Ouning king who lost his body in the fire. Since you are Zhu Yunxi, why hide your identity? Since the big fire, King Ouning has died. Zhu Yunxi shrugged and said, "Besides, I understand all the rules, and you may not want to see me either." The more he looked, the more Zhu Di felt the shadow of Zhu Biao between his eyebrows, making it difficult to conceal his depressed expression. Including the three brothers Zhu Gaoji, they couldn't help but look surprised. "It's not because my cousin died and came back to life, but because Zhu Yunxi is alive, who is their biggest competitor. Zhu Biao is the crown prince, and his son Zhu Yunwen was originally the emperor, leaving no legitimate descendants. According to the rules, this throne should also fall on his siblings, that is, Zhu Yunxi." Zhu Gaosui frowned tightly, his face full of displeasure, and cursed in a low voice, "Damn it, this kid's life is really tough, he really didn't die." Including Zhu Gaoxiu, his heart was also filled with ups and downs. "So that night, it was your kid who secretly ruined my good deed." But as if thinking of something, he suddenly spoke up, "Hu Shanxiang, isn't the person you're talking about liking him?" Hu Shanxiang lowered his eyes and remained silent, but now silence is better than sound. Who else can there be if it's not him? If the incident of being kidnapped had not occurred, in Hu Shanxiang's heart, although he had no basic relationship with Zhu Zhanji, he was both civil and military, and would definitely be a worthy candidate to entrust. But after experiencing a real crisis and enduring the agony of fear and despair, the divine-like man fell from the eaves and led him among the jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards. Love at first sight or a life-saving gesture. In terms of which point, Hu Shanxiang knew in his heart that this heart already had a place to belong. Unfortunately, after sending her back to the palace that night, Zhu Yunxi disappeared without a trace. The only impression I have is that on the night I was with him, the strong wind stirred up thunder and lightning, and he walked in the wind. I thought it could only be a person buried in the heart and bones, a natural anomaly until the time of marriage. She knows, it must be that man back. Okay, that's really interesting. I secretly entered the Imperial tomb with ulterior motives and colluded with the crown princess. You deserve to die for all your crimes." At this moment, Zhu Zhanji suddenly stepped out and spoke coldly. No wonder he was eye-catching. As expected, it was he who seduced Hu Shanxiang and caused him to lose face to this extent. Despite numerous accusations, Zhu Zhanji dared not act rashly. After all, the scolding just now is still vivid in my memory. Zhu Yunxi chuckled lightly and said, "How can we seduce someone by saving them? Like me, with a jade tree facing the wind, if a woman's heart secretly agrees, it is also reasonable, let alone showing kindness to her." On the eve of His Highness Tyson's grand wedding, his own woman was kidnapped by villains, almost losing her innocence but showing no mercy. Instead, she was settling accounts with her life-saving benefactor here. To put it 10,000 steps back, if Hu Shanxiang was really humiliated by those thieves, perhaps Zhu Zhanji would be truly ashamed. "You. What are you? Shut your mouth. What attitude is it when talking to elders, and how does a father teach you? Anyway, my identity has been exposed. Since that's the case, there's a way to go to the end. Zhu Gaoji. What do I do with the connotation of good end? Wait, you said Hu Shanxiang was once abducted by criminals. Suddenly, Zhu Di's eyes narrowed slightly and he spoke softly. Looking at the thoughtful Zhu Di, Zhu Yunxi nodded lightly. There is indeed this matter. Instead of being entangled in trivial matters, it is better to investigate who dares to arrest someone under your nose. The entire city of Nanjing is heavily guarded with patrols throughout. To be able to quietly take people away, the first step is to be familiar with the terrain, with shift time. However, calculating the time, the shift duty was 3 hours per shift, but Hu Shanxiang was tied up during the shift change time. What does this mean? That person has a noble status and a high voice, and can easily find an excuse to support the guards. So, as long as we investigate who was wandering in front of the patrol in the middle of the night, won't the truth come to light? A few light and ethereal words frightened Zhu Gaoxiu to a pale complexion, and he immediately became furious. Don't act smart here. What kind of thing are you? As an emperor, Zhu Yunwen is not a match for my father, let alone you. Be careful not to know how to die. Are you in a hurry? Simply analyze for yourself, why is there someone who can't sit still? Is it because of a guilty heart? Zhu Yunxi was lost in thought, with a pair of clear and wavy eyes staring straight at him, as if he could see through people. This kind of gaze is frightening and frightening. Bang! Bastard, it's you who should shut up, you brainless thing. Zhu Yuanzhang picked up the inkstone and threw it fiercely at him. Take a look at what he just said, what does that mean? Does the connotation usurp its position? Don't know if this is his taboo. Even now, I dare to speak in front of Zhu Yunxi. After being hit in the chest, Zhu Gaoxiu realized that he hadn't stopped the car just now and could only reluctantly shrink his neck and close his mouth. Looking at Zhu Yunxi again, Zhu Di spoke up and said, I will definitely come to the end of this matter. Just, why have you been hiding in Ming Shaoling these years? What are you planning? I hope you take care of yourself. Your Majesty has been worried too much. All of his family members have been buried in the fire, and he has no worries, so he wants to spend time with Emperor Taizu. Anyway, my dad is in the east, and occasionally going to see him can make me feel more at ease, without any other thoughts. After speaking, Zhu Yunxi gave a gentle bow and looked at Zhu Di with clear and indifferent eyes. Yes, what foresight can he have when he looks at a young man in his early 20s and appears weak in literature? Looking at such a scene, and thinking of Zhu Yunxi sitting in the Imperial tomb for years, even Zhu Di felt a slight shock in his heart. Suddenly, Zhu Di let out a light sigh. Well, you are the only inheritor of my elder brother's lineage. To live is to receive the will of heaven. Let's go back to your Ouning Prince's mansion first, there's nothing more for you here. Chapter 8. Treating each other with courtesy and returning to their hometown. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Anyway, the residence of Ming Shaoling has been discovered, and staying there may not be peaceful. Since there is a destination for the Prince Uning's mansion, it's not a bad idea to stay there. Zhu Yunxi was about to leave, but a charming figure was caught in the corner of his eye by the light from the corner of his eye. By the way, there's also Hu Shanxiang. Through what happened just now, he also learned that Hu Shanxiang chose to escape marriage on his wedding day for himself. Zhu Yunxi outlined the corner of his lips and nodded slightly at her. Thank you very much, miss, for your righteous words just now. You don't need to worry about your kindness in the future. Today, let's clean up. The sound seemed to carry a gentle breeze, and in that moment, it disrupted Hu Shanxiang's heart. Unlike Zhu Yunxi, who met him at a young age, he now has a feeling of being detached from the world. Although there are palpitations in my heart, it is still beyond my reach and I dare not touch it at all. Until Zhu Yunxi walked away, her thoughts did not stop. Instead, Zhu Zhanji was the first to break the atmosphere. Even lovers have gone far, still reluctant to part ways. It's just wishful thinking. If he cares about you at all, how could he keep you here alone? Zhu Zhanji embraced her with both hands, and his sarcastic expression was even stronger than his previous attempt to kill her with blood and shame. Sorrow is no greater than death in the heart, and sorrow is no greater than silence. Compared to killing her to vent her anger, making her realize that she was infatuated and wrong, and her heart turned to ashes, this is more painful than death. Shanxiang remained silent and knelt in front of Zhu Di, prostrating and bowing, saying, I understand that my sins are unforgivable. I request your majesty to surrender. Zhu Daibi just regained his composure from what had just happened. Faced with Shanxiang's sincere attitude, he couldn't help but think of Zhu Yunxi's words. A month before your wedding, you were kidnapped and almost lost your innocence. Not bad, just now in Yanming, it was His Highness the Prince of Ouning who saved him. Do you know who did it? My daughter. After hesitating for a moment, Shanxiang instinctively glanced at several princes, his mind wavering. I'm not sure. Zhu Gaosui held his arms in his arms and said, Father, why talk nonsense to this woman? Anyway, she is the one who caused us all to lose face at this wedding, just kill her. He couldn't help but look at Zhu Zhanji with a strange expression and said, It's just a pity for such a beautiful person. Big nephew, you must take good care of son Ruowei next to avoid repeating the same mistake. How do you feel? Even though the old Zhu family has lost face, the two brothers except for the crown prince are quite gloating. I completely belong to the kind of people who watch the excitement but don't show the big picture, and seize the opportunity to fall into the trap. Zhu Gaoqi scolded in a low voice, Third brother, please speak a few words less. With three sons playing the same drama, Zhu Di felt a headache from the noise and remained silent for a long time. For a long time, he scrutinized Shanxiang with his gaze and suddenly said, Send Shanxiang down to rest, serve him well, and not neglect him. What? What? Not only Shanxiang, but also the three brothers, along with Zhu Zhanji, were all dumbfounded and looked at Zhu Di with a bewildered expression. Dad, did you make a mistake? If you don't punish her, you still need to take good care of her. Anyone who doesn't know Zhu Di would doubt whether Shanxiang has any special relationship with him. Zhu Zhanji hurriedly said, Grandpa, even if the adulterer did something unintentional, she actually did that shameless thing. It's a great shame to have no female virtues and be unattractive. It's difficult to convince others to handle things like this. Zhu Zhanji's chest fluctuated day and night, and his unwilling breath condensed on his fist. Zhu Di turned a deaf ear and once again ordered in a low voice, Take Shanxiang down to rest. Under the watchful gaze of people who doubted life, Shanxiang was also taken down in a confused and respectful manner. Crazy. You must be crazy. According to Zhu Di's temperament, if such a thing happened, shouldn't Shanxiang be directly chopped off? It's unbelievable to treat each other with such courtesy. Even though Zhu Gaoqi, who was usually calm, was now gritting his head and risking his anger, he reminded Zhu Di, Dad, you've gone too far in this matter. Is there anything she should be afraid of? She is just a daughter of 100 households of the little royal guards, and only with her amazing appearance can she qualify to fly to the branches. I really don't understand. What kind of ability does she have to make Zhu Di treat her with respect after such a ridiculous and unreasonable act? Are you teaching me how to do things? Zhu Di gave him a slanted glance without indicating the reason. Suddenly getting up and walking to the entrance of the Fengtian Hall under the gaze of a few people, he picked up a piece of broken wood and muttered, with such a sturdy gait, he can easily crush it into pieces. He really has some strength. As the same prince, how brave are I in defeating enemies on the battlefield. Even Crown Prince Yiwen has to bow down before me. But his son, who can smash the door with his bare hands, yet you are holding on to a woman's life and death here. Look at that remarkable achievement. Throwing the wooden fragments in his hand in front of them, Zhu Di strode away in anger. Ji Gang hurriedly ran to catch up. Zhu Di walked extremely fast, with a slight gasp for breath. He ordered, "Go investigate who disrupted the patrol order and appeared near Shanxiang a month ago. The person who disrupts order must be the kidnapper. And Zhu Di has a feeling of unease that this person himself may be very familiar. Obey me." In the midst of his words, he hesitated and asked, "So, how should the Prince of Ouning be treated? It is the son of Zhu Biao who poses the greatest threat to the throne of Zhu Di. It may not be feasible to treat him like an ordinary prince." Speaking of him, Zhu Di snorted coldly, "Keep an eye on him in secret, don't worry about him. If there are any changes, report them at any time, especially when he can't bear the agony and has a request from me. That kid is in the Fengtian Palace, but he quietly crushes the gate. But if he gives me the power, I will grind his backbone. By the way, go and notify the people in the construction department to repair the door and make it more secure." Zhu Di was also depressed. If he had known he really had this ability, he should have found another way. Why take the gate of the Fengtian Palace to vent his anger? Under the guidance of the eunuch, Zhu Yunxi stopped in front of a dilapidated gate. "Is this?" The eunuch explained with a smile, "At the moment, you are so forgetful. This is the Ouning Prince's mansion. It was almost burned down in a big fire. Later, your majesty ordered a simple repair." Zhu Yunxi chuckled lightly and said with a self-deprecating smile, "It's really quite simple. The Ouning Prince's mansion in my memory can be considered grand in any way. It can be repaired so rudimentary, coupled with the long-term residence of wealthy people, the plaque on it is half fallen and is on the verge of collapse. Your Highness, please go and stay first. It's getting late." After the explanation was completed, the eunuch said to leave and didn't even hand in a set of keys to open the door. In terms of behavior, it can be said to be extremely perfunctory. Zhu Yunxi was also not angry, standing at the door, just flicking his fingers at the door lock. With 2 clicks, the door lock fell to the ground and the door opened. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 9. Ridiculous Difficulties, Lao Zhu's Bottom Card. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Dust was everywhere, withered branches and leaves were everywhere, and there were several animal corpses in the dry pool. I think I was trapped in it and couldn't get out and died. Fortunately, Zhu Yunxi was already prepared, and this scene was also expected. Just as I was about to step in, I caught a glimpse from the corner of my eye and saw a figure quietly peeking in the distance. I can't believe there are still unscrupulous people here. It seems that I can only teach them a little lesson. Zhu Yunxi raised his hand in a dignified manner, but his words were full of playfulness. No, 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 no. It's me. Zhu Yuanzhang quickly ran out of the corner of the wall, pretending a bit. Wearing a bamboo hat and a cloth robe, he looked like a simple and unadorned old tenant. Old man, when did you also develop a habit of peeping? Zhu Yunxi withdrew his hand and smiled calmly. But he kept urging and reminding in a low voice, this is not the place to talk. I just caught a glimpse, and there are quite a few people secretly peeking around. Even if he is allowed to live in, it does not mean that Zhu Di is at ease with him. Those hidden people are the best proof. But Lao Zhu is still a bit naive. Even Zhu Yunxi could know he was peeping, so how could he not know anyone else? Without further ado, the two of them stepped into the courtyard, and Zhu Yuanzhang quickly closed the door. Just let out a sigh of relief, and after seeing the bleak scenery in the yard, I instantly lifted it up. What? This is the accommodation he arranged for you, not even cleaning it. At least he's also bleeding a blood stream. Is that how he treats you? It's extreme. Zhu Yuanzhang's chest heaved violently, and the fiery flames in his eyes could almost ignite a wildfire. We haven't reconciled with this scoundrel for usurping the throne yet, and now he's abusing his nephew again. Let's seek justice for you. Zhu Yuanzhang turned around aggressively to leave, but after several attempts, he found that there was no one behind to stop him. Looking back, Zhu Yunxi's face was calm and composed. He looked like I saw you performing. Good grandson, don't you want to stop me for a moment? You're just acting, why should I take it too seriously? Besides, this place looks more comfortable than Ming Shaoling, at least it has some light. Isn't it just a bit of an argument? It's not a big deal, it's really worth exposing Zhu Yuanzhang's identity. Zhu Yunxi remained silent and suddenly stomped his foot, causing the dust around him to soar into the air. He waved his sleeve and blew a gust of wind. In an instant, the strong wind swept the dust, roaring in the same direction like a tornado. Pooh, pooh, pooh. The few people squatting on the high wall ate a mouthful of dust and couldn't help but curse. What kind of bad weather, just now it was warm, and in the blink of an eye, the wind swept through the smoke and dust. Are there still a few born anomalies today? The key is that this wind is not entirely human, why is it blowing in our direction? I bet it was definitely intentional. A few people were cursing and spitting dust, but they didn't notice the slightly raised corners of Zhu Yunxi's mouth. Peeping is possible, but unethical behavior is bound to bring retribution. Oh my, good grandson, you're really amazing. With a wave of foot and a stomp, this place is completely refreshed. Originally indignant, Zhu Yuanzhang's eyes lit up in an instant, and he couldn't close his mouth with joy. Zhu Yunxi said calmly, I just cleaned up some clutter outside. I'm afraid I need to tidy up inside the room. Don't worry, I'm very good at this, your grandfather. You sit here for a while, I'll go pack up. So I admire Zhu Yunxi very much, but Zhu Yuanzhang also has a temper. How could he be so enthusiastic about such rough work? Zhu Yunxi was puzzled for a moment, but still sat silently on the stone bench, taking out a book from his pocket and slowly savoring it. Time flows like flowing water, and the sunset sets. Half of Zhu Yunxi's profile is dyed with a layer of golden light, reflecting as if a deity had descended. After finally tidying themselves up, a few of them stared at Zhu Yunxi again, looking at his stunning divine face and feeling a bit dazed for a moment. Not to mention, this kid is really handsome. If I want to look like this, Chunhua may not even want a dowry and will have to follow me wholeheartedly. Ah, even a man like me feels tempted, and it's not surprising that Shanxiang didn't even want his life for him. Zhu Yuanzhang was cautious and had to turn back and take a private look at every step to confirm that there was no one around. Suddenly, he straightened his body and a cheerful face became serious, whispering, "Where is the head of the divine dragon?" A black shadow flashed by in an instant and appeared in front of Zhu Yuanzhang, kneeling on one knee and saying, "See your majesty. I have been hiding my body in Ming Shaoling for many years, but upon my return, I was treated with such warmth by my son. As the saying goes, reciprocity is a gift, so please repay it for me. Obey me." Just as he was about to retire, Zhu Yuanzhang spoke again and said, "Don't rush for now. At this age, are you really going to personally clean these things? Call a few people, be neat and tidy up here." He is an old man who is adept at killing enemies, but he has to be humble when doing such delicate work. Time quietly passed, although he was already familiar with the content of this book, he still carefully flipped through it page by page, and unconsciously, it was already halfway through. After half an hour, a hoarse and cheerful voice broke the atmosphere of reading. "Good grandson, we have already cleaned up. The old man even prepared a surprise for you. Guess what it is?" Zhu Yuanzhang asked himself and answered, "Roast sweet potatoes. You don't know that sweet potatoes are actually growing out of that pile of weeds in the backyard, and they are still sturdy." The rich aroma of roasted sweet potatoes instantly rushed into his nose. Zhu Yunxi put down his book and looked at the sweet potatoes lying on the table, unable to help but think. Although this royal mansion is a bit dilapidated, in just half an hour, you not only tidied it up, but also stuttered yourself. It's really a precious sword that hasn't aged yet, and your actions are swift. Why does this sound insightful? Zhu Yuanzhang burst out laughing and tried to pass it off. Oh my, before I became the emperor, I was just a rough man. These things look so handy. Is that right? Old man, I didn't expect you to be so talented. You can govern the country with literature, have martial arts, and even work in the kitchen and do rough work. Most importantly, Zhu Yunxi casually opened a roasted sweet potato and laughed while eating, with a very kind smile. Good grandson, keep praising, Grandpa, I love to listen. To be honest, there is really no one in the world who Zhu Yuanzhang admires in his lifetime. Of course, when others praise him, it's just flattery to Lao Zhu, not just a matter of mentioning it. But Zhu Yunxi is an exception. He is a talented cultivator and a life-saving benefactor. He is the treasure of their old Zhu family. Upon being praised by him, Zhu Yuanzhang felt happy from the bottom of his heart, but had an indescribable sense of pride. Who can be proud of the praise of those who have transformed into immortals? Zhu Yuanzhang sat next to him, full of anticipation. After a moment of pause, Zhu Yunxi said with a sense of melancholy, the most important thing is your ability to strategize, Grandpa Huang. Even if you step back from behind the scenes, everything is under control, and even my good grandson can only be led by your nose. Ah! Zhu Yuanzhang panicked for a moment. What does this mean? Did he discover his own divine dragon guard? Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 10. Good son, you are the king of a country in my heart. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Shouldn't it be? The Divine Dragon Guard has extraordinary skills and is extremely cautious in his actions. Unlike those small subordinates, however, it seems that even so, it is indeed difficult to deceive our obedient grandson. Although he promised Zhu Yunxi not to interfere in external affairs, it seems that he did not agree and cannot cultivate his own power. Right, as for why we need to cultivate influence, well, it must be in case of unexpected needs. Zhu Yuanzhang's mind was spinning rapidly, trying to find a reasonable argument. But suddenly Zhu Yunxi asked coldly, Grandpa, the strong wind in the Guangding court was blowing so well before. Ah! Fourth uncle wanted to confirm my identity, so you brought a gust of wind and lifted my sleeve. You are truly my good grandfather. He took another bite of the melon, although his words were not blaming, there was a hint of settling accounts after autumn. Thinking that the matter with the Divine Dragon Guard had been exposed, Zhu Yuanzhang breathed a slight sigh of relief and explained in a dumbfounded manner, Oh my good grandson, that was all an accident. You also know that I haven't made any progress in my cultivation over the years, but unfortunately, at that time, I suddenly had an understanding and improvised to let go. However, it turned out to be a mistake. Ah, look at this. It must be fate. Yes, it must be fate. Old man, you are very bad. Believe me, you're a ghost. Rolling his eyes, Zhu Yunxi continued to ask, why did you take the risk of exposure to appear in Guangding? Don't tell me, you're worried about me. Zhu Yunxi's strength can crush the entire Imperial Guard into powder with just a flick of his finger. Regarding this, old Zhu is transparent to everyone, right? Seeing that he couldn't keep it hidden, Zhu Yuanzhang stopped pretending and said, Good grandson, why do you think you have both strength and intelligence? Before, you didn't know how to show off. If we knew you had this ability, we wouldn't make that Zhu Yunwen the crown prince. So. Zhu Yuanzhang's expression was uncertain, and he said awkwardly, You know what I think. Why bother to delve deeper into it? Can't you give my old friend some face? Suddenly, he grabbed Zhu Yunxi's hand and looked a little more serious. Good grandson, Grandpa Huang really thinks that only you can sit in this position, and others can't sit well even if they can't sit steadily. The mountains and rivers of the Ming Dynasty have been your grandfather and me lifelong efforts. I don't want to see it rot in the hands of those younger generations. He knows that no matter which dynasty or generation it is, there is always a time limit. The reasons for the transition from a glorious era to desolation are just a few. The monarch is incompetent and ignorant, suffering from natural and man-made disasters, internal and external troubles. Previously, old Zhu believed that both individuals and their families should follow the direction of fate. Only after spending time with Zhu Yunxi did he realize how intelligent and demonic people really are in this world, and how indifferent they are to gold, silver, and treasures, with no intention of gaining supreme power. Combining strength and wisdom, possessing exceptional skills and a sense of righteousness. If such a person becomes the ruler of a country, it will surely prosper, the world will have no worries, and achieve eternal success. Of course, this is just Lao Zhu's idea, and Zhu Yunxi himself has no intention of it. If he really had this idea, he would have killed Zhu Di long ago. You, just accept those careful thoughts. Shaking his hands, Zhu Yunxi stood up slightly and sighed lightly. When this person reaches a high place, he can easily get what he wants, so he feels bored. We are also living beings. After leaving Ming Shaoling, we finally have a decent place to live. In the future, you can rest and practice here well. As for me, while pursuing the fairyland, I will take you out for a stroll when I have time. Being carefree and unrestrained will not hinder anyone. Zhu Yunxi knew that both himself and Lao Zhu should have been dead. Being able to reach the current height is already a matter of heaven's pity, why seek dissatisfaction? Zhu Yuanzhang snorted lightly and said, "You're quite carefree. What about that girl? She could have risked her life for you. You slapped your butt and left. What she did might be inevitable, right?" Above Guangding, Zhu Yuanzhang could see it all. Besides being good-looking, Shanxiang is also quite brave and has a sense of loyalty. The kindness of saving lives has always been remembered in my heart, and I am willing to sacrifice my life to repay it. In today's world, it is very rare to have such a woman who values loyalty and loyalty. Zhu Yuanzhang was still sighing, but Zhu Yunxi turned around and waved his hand. "Don't worry, for the sake of the face of Emperor Taizun, my good fourth uncle won't do anything to her. If he really killed Shanxiang, it would be telling the world that she betrayed the crown prince and had connections with other men. How will the outside world spread rumors? A generation of imperial grandsons, with power, beauty, and strength, yet still being compared by others." Zhu Zhanji was cuckolded, and in a fit of anger, he killed his unmarried wife. To put it bluntly, as long as Shanxiang dies, whether or not it was killed by the old Zhou family, it will be assumed by the world that they did it. Zhu Zhanji is destined to bear this joke. The best way is to go the opposite way. Treat Shanxiang with courtesy and confuse the audience first, making it difficult for them to understand. When everyone's thoughts were wavering, Shanxiang casually found a reason for what he said during the wedding. For example, Shanxiang was frightened by a natural anomaly, so his mental state was poor and he said some nonsense. Or it could be the threat from the old party of Jiangwen, who wants to make the Zhu family ashamed. The better for Shanxiang, disguise her as a victim, and Zhu Zhanji's face will be saved. That is the crown prince that Zhu Di values the most. Even if Zhu Di is impulsive, he must consider his grandson. The night quietly arrived, and Zhu Yunxi's figure gradually drifted away. Zhu Yunxi stood in the distance, but his heart suddenly became clear. He probably guessed, at a young age, one can see people's hearts so clearly, even my biological father has a delayed reaction. Not bad, truly the ruler of a country in my heart. The night is hazy. It should have been a joyful day, but the night seemed particularly desolate. Although her wedding has been postponed, today Sun Ruowei is still sitting by the bed in her red wedding dress, quietly watching Zhu Zhanji complain in the courtyard, with a few more disappointments in her eyes. Is such a person really worth betting on? If it were in the past, it would be fine, but after seeing Zhu Yunxi with her own eyes, she felt a bit regretful. She originally had no love for Zhu Zhanji, and from the beginning, she was only willing to marry him for the sake of his great-grandson status. It's just that some people don't appear, and if they do, it's hard to erase their presence from their hearts. After sitting quietly for a while, Sun Ruowei's eyes suddenly showed a hint of determination. She slowly got up, changed into a joyful outfit, and instead put on her usual attire. Now that the grand wedding with Zhu Zhanji is yet to be decided, perhaps it is still a fortunate thing for me. Everything is still in time. Taking a deep breath, Sun Ruowei quietly stepped out of the door and disappeared into the darkness. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th.